This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where we spread awareness for men's mental health and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes drop weekly.
I'm grateful to have this platform, Lord. There are so many things in my life right now going on, and it's just wonderful to be able to sit down and talk to a fellow brother and just to share his testimony. Also for myself, so I can heal and I can grow at the same time. And I'm grateful, Lord, for all the blessings that you've given me. I pray tonight that you cover my mother in your blood, protect her, and just help her through this whole process that we're dealing with and her sickness. Please protect my brother while he's taking the fight to the enemy. Be with Chris, be with his family, be with Tambo as he's going through his own trials, Lord. And we're going to cover that tonight. I'm just honored, Lord, to be here to sit behind this microphone and share these brave men's testimonies. It's in your mighty name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Steve, and tonight I'm sitting down with a federal law enforcement officer and his canine partner. I'm going to share the story of Canine Tambo and his partner, Chris. We're going to talk about resilience. We're going to talk about perseverance, what it's like to be a federal law enforcement officer, but also a storyteller and an author. So while you're watching, make sure you ring the bell, subscribe to the channel. New episodes drop every week. We're also on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. Chris, Tambo, thank you very much, guys, for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, man. As I was telling you before we came on, I've been enjoying your podcast for a while. So it's a pleasure for me and Tambo to be on here, and I'll try to angle it a little bit. He is with us tonight. He's here chilling on the couch. So
nice.
So his head may pop up a few times throughout the recording.
Awesome. And I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm rocking Tambo's t-shirt from 9 Line Apparel. One more round. So you guys be sure and support them, give them some love. And just a quick plug for 9 Line. Nice Stalker owned company. The 160 is very near and dear to my family. That's all I can say about it. But great shirt, great cause. And you guys be sure to check those boys out. We'll talk about that as we get into the episode. So, Chris, let's start from the beginning, man. Let's hear about your story and where are you from, man? Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Born and raised. Been here most of my life, which is going to sound way out of sync from where I live, but minus a 7-year stint in Hawaii. I've been in Baltimore, most of my life. So,
Nice.
Born and raised here.
Okay. So growing up, did you go to like public school? Like what was home life like for you, man?
Growing up, I was in, well, we'll start from the beginning. You know, I always say I kind of grew up an underdog before everything started. My dad left before I could walk or talk. And that was tough for me. And I remember my mom always told me that, after my dad left, I got real sick as a baby, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And they were constantly doing all these tests, trying to figure out, what was wrong. And years later, my mom said, and I agree with her, because I had a mentor die about 7 years ago, and I went through the same thing of getting really sick, going through all these tests and couldn't figure out what was going wrong. And I think it was a broken heart. And I truly believe that I felt that at the young age of losing my dad. So I always talk about kind of, growing up and losing my best friend before I even got him. So that was tough for me. And, so I grew up with my mom and my sister, and, we did the best we could, but it was hard kind of growing up without that male role model and that dad in your life to kind of show you the way when you needed it.
Father wounds are so hard, man. And I talked to so many guys that served in the military and law enforcement, and unfortunately it's a common theme. It's just so many of us just grow up. Were you able to kind of find as you got older, like a father figure, like a coach or a teacher, somebody you could kind of gravitate towards and kind of learn from?
Yeah, man. And that's a whole crazy story in itself. And when I kind of went through, my childhood without a lot of direction. My dad was in and out of my life for periods of time for a couple of months, and then he would
Mm.
disappear, and then kind of come back, and it was always, I'd get my hopes up, and then I was let down. So, and I kind of struggled with jobs. I couldn't find anything I was passionate about, and I would work, and I was never putting my heart and soul in it. And my dad was very stoic, and sometimes a little cold, and said I didn't have his work ethic. And years later, I
Mm.
think he was right at the time, because I needed something that I was passionate about. And that's when I kind of found law enforcement. And so, talking about this mentor, he's the one that took a chance on me. I call myself a kid at the time, but 24 years old, brought me onto our canine unit and took a chance and saw something in me when a lot of other people didn't. And quite frankly, I didn't see in myself either.
So I want to ask you this, Chris, because what drew you to canines? Did you grow up with a dog? Were you a big dog person? Because I know you're gonna laugh, but when I was in police work, that was the last thing I wanted to do. Like I was scared. I was scared of them, man. I didn't want to be around them.
I,
So,
I think a lot of it is like, I was a kid growing up, is that when you don't have your dad, and I was real quiet growing up, right? And I
mm,
think there's a difference between being shy and quiet. And
yeah.
I wasn't shy. I just was processing everything and trying to figure out where I fit in with everything. I had enough friends, and I wasn't the kid that didn't have any friends. I had plenty of friends, and I was just quiet, and but also had this built this armor up of just not never feeling good enough, and having these insecurities. And I've still carried that, and I just deal with it better now. But a lot of times, I go to the family functions, and it was always the dogs that I would gravitate toward, and it'd be the
Mm,
ones, oh, don't go near him, he bites. But those were the dogs that kind of gravitated toward
hmm,
me. And I think that with dogs, they see past the armor, right? They see past the wall that she put up, right? And a lot of times, I know when I was younger, and then when I was dating early on, people say, "Oh, you seemed unapproachable," but a lot of that was just, it's armor that I put up and stuff.
mhm.
And I think with dogs and stuff, they just see through it. So I've always had a connection with animals, right? And I've always had a love for them, and even the ones that they said were, aggressive and stuff like that. I think we just had an understanding with each other. And I think deep down, over the hard exterior and posture, they saw a lot that I was a gentle soul as well. And so we just kind of connected. So I always had that connection with them, but I didn't know that that's kind of where I'd end up as a career, though.
So you think dogs can kind of sense maybe that broken heart inside a big strong guy, and they kind of sense like you're maybe the gentle giant because they almost want to provide that nurturing effect. Is that true?
Man, 100%. And even more now that I know that, after, I've retired 3 canines now, and the first 2, they've since passed. But those dogs are with you during your canine partners with you, take the work out of it, but they're with you through those hardest parts of your life. Those, I always talk about those silent moments when a guy sits alone at home at night, and 10, 11 o'clock at night, and trying to process everything. And it's that security blanket, right? That dog that's sitting there, that it doesn't words don't have to be spoken, but they understand that you're going through something, and they give off this energy, and it's calming, right? And you kind of know that you're not going through it alone. And honestly, that's what's helped get me through so much in my life, is my canine partners and dogs early on.
That's a good way to put it, and that makes a lot of sense. And maybe I guess that really shows why so many service dogs that you see or therapy dogs are out there, because it's easier maybe for some folks to get along with a dog than talk about their feelings or get into some kind of support group. And I know from me personally, like animals, when I've lived by myself, you don't feel as lonely because you've got somebody there. You can talk to them. They're hanging out with you, so it almost gives you that like almost like a purpose. You're not just by yourself in the house doom scrolling or watching TV because you've got someone to take care of.
Man, 100%. And I call myself somewhat of an empath, where I'm big on feeling people's energy, and
Hmm.
energy is real, right?
Yeah.
And when you're alone in the house, compared to even when you're in the house and there's a pet there, an animal, whether it's a cat, a dog, or whatever, you feel that energy, right? And you
Hmm.
don't feel alone. And it is a calming sense. And I remember one of the first interviews I did, one of the questions they asked me at the end is like, "Hey, what is something that would bring the right and left together?" And I said, "Well, that's easy. That's a dog, because
Hmm.
you bring that dog in the middle, and for a brief 15, 20 minutes, they're focused on the comfort that that dog is bringing them, and they're not focused on the differences that they have with each other." And that's why, you see in the prisons and stuff where they've started, a lot of the inmates are raising these dogs that become therapy dogs, but it's actually great therapy for the inmates, because they're getting that calming sense. And I think for a lot of them, that's the first time that they don't feel judged by somebody, right? It's these animals that are healing them too from within the prison walls.
That's a good way to put it. Before we get into your career with Canine, I got a couple questions.
Mhm.
Growing up, was church like a tradition with your family? Did faith play a role for your family growing up? And before you answer that, I want to throw into the equation, why law enforcement? Like, what drove you to that career field?
Like I said, I always wanted to feel like I was making a difference, because I would go through life and I'd have jobs, and some of them paid pretty good when I was, for my age, and I just wasn't passionate about it. And I always tell my mom that I need to feel passion. I need to feel like I'm making a difference. And when I started taking some courses at the community college, and I had a professor that had just retired from the FBI, and he kind of
Hmm.
became my first mentor, and really kind of talked to me about a lot how he's helped other people, and took me under his wing. And that really stood out to me, is like, because I've always been the type of person where I've gotten the enjoyment of watching other people open Christmas presents, rather than
Hmm.
getting something for myself, and seeing other people have success. And I wanted, and that kind of appealed to me in law enforcement, to be able to make a difference, and bring positivity to people, and help them when they're sometimes at their scariest or lowest moments. And I know the view on law enforcement has changed a lot since then, but I'm still a firm believer in all of that.
That's a really good way to put it. Thanks for sharing that. So back to the other question, like growing up, did you guys attend church? Was faith a part of your family?
Yeah, yeah. For a long time, we go to church on Sundays, and I would always have these conversations with my mom, and I would say, why am I not good enough? I don't have a dad.
Mm.
My dad doesn't care. And one of the things that my mom would constantly say is, "You do have a dad.
Hmm.
Yeah, God is your father." And she
That's
would
awesome.
always she would always tell me that, and she said, "He's walking with you. You do have a father, and he's going to be with you to the end." And that's always stuck with me, is that when I felt like my dad wasn't going to come back around, or he just wasn't going to give me what I needed, that God was in my life. And even though I think some people, they want to see instant signs, or, hey, I want to hear this song come on, or see this light come through a window, but I think it's a matter of having faith, and believing that he's there, and that silence of them, eh, um of God walking with you through your hardest times. And I know that he's been with me throughout the trials and tribulations of my life, or I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
That's awesome, man. That's a lot of wisdom from your mom. What a great way
Yeah.
to put that.
Yeah.
That should be on a t-shirt or something, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
'Cause I know a lot of us grow up kind of those of us that grew up in like a legalistic or ritualistic church sometimes look at God as the angry father, that he's not with us. We're afraid of, or I did, like afraid of him, so we kind of try to stay out of his way, and like, but it's obviously he's not like that. He's a loving father, but it's really cool to hear that your mom gave you that advice growing up. Okay, so let's go back into law enforcement. So now you're into law enforcement.
Mhm.
So I like to ask this question too, Chris. Like, when you got into law enforcement, was a job what you thought it would be before you got canine? Because I know that's a little different based on departments, and patrol, I think, is probably universal for most areas. But was it what you thought it would be when you started?
So it's interesting. So before I went to the federal side, I worked for a local department, and I got in with them. And they were, it was a town here in Maryland where they're slow in the winter, but then it's kind of like a vacation down,
Mm.
and then in the summer it gets crazy. So they brought me on, and they wanted a young guy that could kind of look the part out of the academy. So though they brought me into narcotics right out of the academy because there
Nice.
was a boardwalk and they wanted young guys that could, go out and buy the drugs on the boardwalk, and then they have a takedown team. So, man, when doing that at 23 years old, man, I felt like, man, that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
Um, and it's
it's
funny,
awesome.
in the book that I just wrote, I did a shout out to my friend Sean, who took me under his wing. He was one of the tenured guys on the narcotics unit, and we'd always team up and go out in the car together. And we would drink coffee, whether we were staking somewhere out doing surveillance or, just going on calls and stuff. But he would kind of give me that wisdom and kind of really took me under the wing and showed me what it meant to not only be a police officer, but how to do things the right way. And I talk about it all the time. That short period of time doing that was the foundation of my career, where I really kind of felt like I was going somewhere positive, and I was doing something, and I was a part of a team. And I knew also right then and there we were like an 8-man team, and
Hmm.
being a part of a small team and having that camaraderie and being able to joke with each other. I love that atmosphere. So it was just a great environment, and those guys, and man, that was like 27 years ago now, and three of those guys are still some of my best friends up until today, and they've came out to my current agency and talked and done classes
Hmm.
and stuff. So we still keep in touch. So it's just a great start to my career.
Man, I bet that was fun coming right out of the academy, getting an assignment like that.
Oh,
That sounds amazing.
it felt, I'm aging myself, but you're talking about like 21 Jump Street, man. I'm like, you know, but man, you feel like your training day. You feel like you're
Yeah,
you're you're
yeah.
you're, you're coming out and you're doing all this cool stuff, man. And it's like, wow, is this really a job? Like, so years later, as you get into it, you realize that that's not really common. That they do that, and you got to work your way up to it. But then again, I was very lucky to be selected for my canine unit at my current agency at the time that I did as well. So I think I was kind of blessed in a lot of ways to be selected for some of these units very early on.
Yeah, and if you guys know what 21 Jump Street is, let us know in the comments, because I don't think many of our viewers know what that
Man,
is.
they're gonna be googling it now, and
They are. What?
it's funny, bro, because like at work now, like I lead a lot of people, and I'll start quoting from certain movies like as a joke, and then they look at me like I had three heads. And I think the last one I did was from like Dumb and Dumber. I think it
Oh
was
no.
the sea bass, right? The sea bass thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thick
they're
as
looking
that,
at me
see
like,
back.
they're like, "Who the hell is Seabass?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You've never."
Oh,
And I'm like, "Man, when did that movie come out?" Like,
that's awesome. Yeah, dude, it's probably like 95.
yeah,
It was. I know it was a long time ago. That's
man, I'm
awesome.
like, God, I'm getting old, man.
That's funny. Well, that was when the movies were good though, so we
Yeah,
got to keep their memories alive.
right.
Uh, I mean, it's like Johnny Utah. Who's Johnny
Oh
Utah? It's
man,
Point Break.
that's another another
Yeah,
classic right there, man.
yeah, man. I love Point Break. So without saying the names, I'm just curious. Like, the hearing you talk, I would have guessed you would have gone to a different federal agency. I won't say the name
Yeah,
of it, but
yeah,
you're with a different one. So,
yeah.
without giving the audience too much, for OPSEC, how did you end up into the agency that you're with now?
Man, it was kind of by chance, to be honest. I finished up, and when I was working for the other department, I knew it was a kind of going to be a short-term thing. So I was going to some job fairs, and I was back at my community college, and they were actually there.
Mm,
And I quite frankly at the time didn't know much about them, or knew that they even existed, or whatever. And so we had some conversations, and I was also applying at other federal entities that you're probably familiar with. And quite frankly, they were the first one to call me. And
hmm,
I went through the whole process to get in there. And like I said, I got in and was kind of feeling things out, and it was just kind of the timing they hadn't done a hiring in a long time. So these openings for canine came open after me being on for like 7 months. And I put in for it, and I didn't think I had a shot in hell to get on there. And there was people telling me that I wasn't ready for it. And they did have great candidates, but that's when this first mentor, Bernie, kind of came into my life. And I think he saw something in me, like I said, that other people didn't, and I think I made him laugh at the end of the interview because they kind of caught me off guard. Because and I still use this interview question for years, because one of the things, like, for being a canine handler, right? One of the things is you have to be able to motivate the dog, right? And you can't just be like you can be very skilled and have knowledge, but you can't be a robot. So you got to be able to talk to the dog, change your voice tones and stuff like that. So we did a lot of things where we wanted to see people's personalities. So their question was, and they kind of started this trend, is, all right, the last question, you got 2 minutes, you can tell a joke, sing a song. And I was just like, I was joking around, and I said, and I was a big Ravens fan. And this is a time of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs. And I said, well, I can do Ray Lewis's squirrel dance. And they're like, all right, let's see it. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, bust it out. And so here I am in this, and I talk about it in the book, in this dusty old canine office in uniform, and I bust out, Ray's dance, and I'm not going to do it on camera, but I can but I perfected it. And man, I had them rolling, and I think that they loved it. So
Won them
I think
over.
that was
Yeah.
part of the reason, and there was just, and we would still talk about it for years after that.
That's awesome, man. Well, naming those players off, I mean, that was back when, cause I'm near Nashville. The Titans and the Ravens had that big,
Oh,
big
man, Eddie
rivalry.
George. Oh man,
Yeah.
like, dude, that's when football, man. I used to go to all the games, and those rivalries between Ray and Eddie. I mean,
Yeah.
that was so cool just to watch it in those games, and that was the rivalry for the Ravens before the Steelers really kind of came into it. It was the Ravens and the Titans, man, or the
Yeah.
Oilers, I guess, before that. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just it was such a cool rivalry, and it was a cool time to really watch football with the defense.
Feels like, ages ago, man. It was a long
I
time
know,
ago.
I know,
We're old, dude.
I know. Exactly.
So as far as like you get into the federal side, and was that why part of the reason you were in Hawaii?
Yeah, yeah. So I had an opportunity. I had So I got onto canine. They gave me my first dog, which was a dual purpose Malinois. And man, growing up, I had like labs and and poodles and stuff, right? So I'm like, they give me this Tasmanian devil, and even funnier, when when I got on, I was still living at home with my mom, right? So I'm
Oh,
like
okay, yeah.
24 years old, and now they're, it's a little bit different, but they said, well, here's your dog, and I'm driving home to mom's house, and I'm bringing this Tasmanian devil home, and it was like, I'm like, my God, what did I get myself into? But he turned out to be an amazing dog, man. He was a great patrol dog. I learned a lot, and I tell you what, like, I think in some ways, I needed to mature a little bit because I was coming out of that party phase of being a young guy, but I really realized all the discipline that needed to go into to working a dog, especially, a patrol dog, and everything that went in with it. And that's where my mentor kind of came into play, because he really let me make mistakes and kind of learn from them, right? And I think that's the key that we've lost sight of over the years, is that when men sometimes make mistakes, whether it's in the workplace or life, it's sometimes you need a second chance, or you need to have time, you need to have a little bit of lenience. As long as it's nothing too egregious, you should be able to, have time to be able to learn from that and grow from that. And that's one of the things that he enabled me to do. And I went on to have a great career with that dog. So with his name was Rex, and then when Rex retired, I had an opportunity to go out to Hawaii for an assignment. So, I jumped on it. Never been out there before, and kind of just moved to the middle of the Pacific on a
Yeah.
whim, which was
Yeah.
crazy.
That is Point Break.
Yeah,
Going out
man.
to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of canine officers on the show, and I was just thinking as you were talking, does it ever get, do you ever feel like you can't turn it off because you're always with the dog? Like you can't, can you ever just kind of chill and relax and not feel like you're always on with the dog? Or how does that work, Chris? Like because obviously they're very smart and alligators are so hyper and active. Is there ever just any, like, I mean, Tambo obviously with stuff he's going through, he's kind of chill, but like, do you ever get exhausted and you just feel like you can't get a break because you're with, the dog so much?
Early on with Rex, it was tough, especially being as I'm sure most of the handlers say, a young Malinois, and those dogs need to work, and what the type of work we did, we needed that drive. But the good thing is I was working 5 days a week, and we were getting out, and we were training and working. It was like you go into those long stretches of the weekend, and that's what I was always tell handlers when I took over the unit years later is like, hey, this job changes your life because it's a 24/7 responsibility. So once you go home, the job doesn't shut off. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you want to go to a Ravens game on Sunday and then go out in town afterwards. You have to now be cognizant that that dog's at your house, and you need to go home and make sure that dog is taken care of, and can't be left alone or unattended or in a very kennel for long periods of time. So yeah, there's that where it does change your life. But once you get, I will say this, once you get into a good system, it becomes natural. And for me, I had a good system where I know a lot of people is like, okay, he's a working dog, so when he comes home, I'm going to have him separated from everybody. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
do this, and that wasn't the case for me. I'm a firm believer is like when the dog is off, the dog is off, and he's going to enjoy time and become part of the family. And I've done
Yeah.
that with all three of my dogs. Some have taken a little bit longer with that acclimation period, but I found that the bond that I was able to create with these dogs by giving them that opportunity to be a part of the family when they came home enabled them to be more social in the times that they needed, right? And I
Yeah.
think the perfect working dog is that they know when it's time to work, they turn that switch on, but when they're home with their family, they can relax. They can hang out with your kids if you have any,
Mm-hmm.
and if people come over, they're able to be around them. Now, they're still dogs, right? And I always say this, and every dog can still bite, and it's just like people. There's going to, especially with working dogs, there's going to be sometimes a dog doesn't like another dog for another reason, and there's going to be times you have to put them away. But that's all getting to know your dog, and when you have to do certain things with that dog, whether you have to keep him out or put him away. But for me, like once I got into that system, it became pretty easy. But I think I struggled with it more early on, especially with my first dog being the Malinois and just being a dog that just wants to work and work and work. And it was funny when he retired and we moved to Hawaii, man, he didn't want to stay home by himself. And Hawaii is such a laid back town. And I had bought this older H2 Hummer, and I would take Rex everywhere on the island. Like we would go over to Turtle Bay, and I'd valet the car, and he would just hang out in the car while we went to dinner. I had the windows down, and dude, he was like a local celebrity on the island, man.
Wow.
Because I knew if I left him home, he would start doing some crazy stuff. Like he learned how to open the doors, open the windows. I mean, this dog was too
Wow.
smart for his own good. And then as he got older and senile, he was just doing crazy stuff. So I was like, you know what? He's just coming with us. And
Hmm.
so yeah, we would go places in valet, and they knew the Hummer and they knew Rex, and he would just hang out in the car because that's where he was comfortable. Now you can't do that in Baltimore, but like
No.
Hawaii is just like Hawaii is a different vibe, man. So
Yeah.
it was just it's kind of a cool time, but it was interesting.
So when he retired, did he kind of like, did he let all that aggression and intensity kind of go and just kind of become like a normal dog then, since he was hanging out
It
with you all the time?
it took a while. Like I said, it was man, it was a lot of separation anxiety, and then like I could leave him out at home to the point before he retired, and he knew he was going to still go to work. But then once he
Mm,
retired, he said, "All right, I'm not going to work anymore." He started regressing and getting into stuff, and
mm,
just tearing stuff up because he was pissed off being home. And thankfully, the funny part is that I found like a doggy daycare. He was getting older before I moved to Hawaii, and they kind of segregated him, but then they let him in to play with some of the other dogs. And it was funny. They did an Easter egg hunt for the dogs, right? And so with treats in them and stuff. Well, of course, with his nose, he found everything. They had to get him out of there because he was finding all the treats and stuff. But he would go in circles. He was always kind of the leader, and all the dogs would kind of follow him. But I mean, thankfully, man, I had to find stuff like that because this dog he never really fully turned the switch off from working. He still wanted to be with me all the time. And one of the coolest things is, I had a place right on the North Shore in Hawaii off of Papailoa where they filmed the TV show Lost. And dude, I could literally walk across my street, and I lived on this, and the ocean was right there. So in the summer months, man, when the waves are really calm, he loved to go out and swim in the ocean. And I would have thought this dog would have sunk like a rock, man, but he swam out there, didn't go out too far, but it was such a cool sight because all the big sea turtles were out there, and he would swim. And then, once like October started rolling, September, October, man, you could only sit on that beach and watch because those waves would get up to 30 or 40 feet, which was incredible to watch. But I wasn't there setting my foot in that, man. They leave that to the professionals at that point.
I was going to ask if Rex liked the ocean because you guys were out in Hawaii. That's really cool, man. That's awesome.
He loved it. And it's funny, I had my second dog out there, Tina, which was the one I was working out there. And she was the polar opposite. She was an all black Shepherd Malinois mix, and she hated the sand. She hated the feeling of the sand on her feet. So I would, I'd get her out on the beach, and she would jump up and say, "Get me out of here." So she was like a complete opposite. And it was such a cool dynamic with those two as well, because she was a very much a one dog person, alpha female, and Rex was an alpha male but loved everybody. But they kind of coexisted. They never interacted, but they coexisted. Like they would sleep on the couch butt to butt, but they would not but they wouldn't interact. And then as Rex got older and got more feeble, she would try to punk him out. But it was a funny dynamic. And I ended up retiring Tina out there. So then I had moved on to some leadership positions, and I was content leaving canine then. And I was like, man, this is cool. I got my retired dogs at home. And then that's when I was kind of hit with my first hard losses, as I lost Rex, who got cancer. He was 13 years old, and still a good life, but that was devastating and took a piece of my soul. And the hard one that really hit me is Tina had just retired, and she died just a year later from cancer as well. So
no kidding.
I got hit, man. I got hit with losing both of my working dogs within a year, and man, it took a piece of my soul. And I remember when I lost Tina, and they could hear my cry, like to hear, a 240-pound guy like crying from the depths of his soul inside the vet when I had to let her go, man. It was so hard. And I told myself at the time, like, man, as much as I love canine, I can't go through this pain again. It's too much, because these dogs have been everything to me. And like I said, not just we talked about the working, but those times when you go through those trials and tribulations of your life, and they're there for you, and they're that presence are there, and it was gone. And I really struggled with that, not having them, but then also the thinking about going through the pain of losing a dog again. And I just said I couldn't do it. But it's like they say, once a handler, always a handler, and sometimes it calls you back, which it eventually did.
So do you have any tips, or can you share any insights on, how did you manage your mental health, especially going through losing two dogs that close together? Because, obviously with law enforcement, we're really trying to raise awareness for mental health. And now you've lost two dogs, and you're in that mindset. Like, how did you manage your mental health, Chris?
I mean, luckily he's my best friend to the day. I had a close friend out there, and that story's funny because he used to always see me. And like I said, when I talked about early on, putting that putting that armor on. And I always joke with the guys at work is I was like, look, I know I have a resting bitch face for a guy, but I'm really not that much of a jerk. You got to get to know me a little bit and you see how much of a nice guy I am. But he would always tell me, man, I thought you were the biggest a-hole when I met you, but when we joke about it, we ended up becoming, best friends. So having him there to lean on, and then quite honestly, man, the gym and working out, and that's when I kind of started getting into Muay Thai
Mm.
and boxing, and I really felt a sense of calmness after like going out and training, and then you can't go without it. And I know you can relate to that, as you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and you get some time in the gym, whether it's lifting or whatever type of workout you do. But having that calm sense over you after that was one of the things that really helped get me through it. And quite frankly, I tried talking to some, professionals and stuff like that, but I just felt like they didn't get me.
Mm.
And it's funny because I always said the dogs understood me, but the dogs couldn't speak. It was kind of just that unspoken bond and that energy that they gave off. But I'll be honest, man, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And it was for a long time. And I had to kind of keep finding outlets, but I think the key is finding positive outlets, right?
Hmm.
And not and not chasing anything like a quick fix to make
Yeah.
you feel good, whatever that is. And that's where, guys tend to get themselves in trouble in life, whether it's being, unfaithful to their significant other, or gambling, or doing other things, or drinking and stuff like that. I think you got to really look at the positives, right? And that's what
Hmm.
you kind of need to focus on for those releases.
No, that's 100% true. And I think, so many people try to numb pain instead of sitting in it and trying to understand it and process it. And that's where you can get yourself into trouble, is when you try to numb it and go about things that aren't, necessarily healthy, healthy behaviors. What about your faith at this point in your life? Were you kind of leaning on God to help get you through these two traumatic losses?
Yeah, it's kind of the late nights, talking to God, and I always go back to like my mom,
Hmm.
telling me that, God was my father. Because quite honestly, man, like during a lot of the hard times, and not, questioning yourself and all this stuff, I really just wanted a conversation with my dad, right?
Yeah.
And there'd be times that I would, try to call him up, and I remember one vividly and saying, "Hey, can you give me any advice? Because I feel like I'm going down some of the same paths that you did, and any advice that you can give me to help me." And he's like, he would just be like, "Chris, you're not me and I'm not you. You need to figure that out." And it was just
Hmm.
it felt so cold at the time, and I didn't feel connected, and I was so badly looking to take something from that conversation, and I really needed it. And I still had my mentor back here in Maryland when I was in Hawaii, that I would call Bernie, who was running our canine unit at the time, that I would talk to as well, and he helped me in so many ways. And I think sometimes that as a guy, you really need to have those male role models in your
Hmm.
life, no matter how old you are, to be able to lean on and seek guidance, right? Where you're, and
Yeah.
also feel like you're not going to be judged.
100%, man. Did your dad, did he ever kind of come back around at any point in your life? Like, is he around today in your life, like
Um,
present in your life?
so he's since passed, and
Mhm.
I'll talk about that closure at the end, which is kind of beautiful. But he would come in and out of my life, and one of the big traumas that I had in my life, that I carried for like, 25 years, flash, and we'll make ourselves old again here. When Cal Ripken broke the Lou
Oh, yeah.
Gehrig's 21-31 streak, I'm a huge Orioles fan. My dad, I was about 18, 19 years old, I think. My dad was back in my life for a bit and got me
Mm.
tickets for my birthday.
Oh,
And I'm
cool.
like, man, I was the biggest Cal Ripken fan, and my dad got me tickets, and I'm thinking, this is something that I'm going to carry for the rest of my life, to share this memory with like this iconic sports legend that I looked up to, and to go with my dad and to have that memory. So I'm at home. And it's easy for me to, it was hard for me to even talk about this for years, but I'm home, got my Orioles jersey on, my Ripken jersey on. And my dad never showed up. And I remember calling him. He never answered. And I finally got a hold, and he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. Something came up. You'd see if you can go with somebody else." And I ended up
Oh,
going with who's now my stepfather. He stepped in, which was awesome. But
yeah.
I always say that, I wanted to have that moment with my dad, and I always said it is kind of like that. Every time I would go to Camden Yards after that for a game, it was like that empty seat, and that
Mm,
moment that, quite frankly, broke my heart
yeah.
for years. And I'll give you the full circle moment, and I know we'll get into Tambo, but we're getting this in 2025, last year, getting honored by the Tambo and I are getting honored by the Baltimore Orioles, my hometown team. Third inning, they bring us up on the left field perch. They got us up on the big screen. They're honoring, Tambo and his fight. And I look down from the perch, and my son is there. And
Oh,
my son
nice.
is smiling at me. And man, that healed everything, because
Yeah.
I now got that moment with my son that I didn't get with my dad. And man, I remember going home later that night and breaking down and crying so hard. I was like, my gosh, that that was everything. And it was just that brief moment. And I was just like, holy crap. It's funny how life kind of can sometimes come full circle, right? And bring
Yeah.
you to that moment and heal what was 20 some years of pain.
Wow, man, that's incredible. I bet you're an incredible dad, man. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you were able to share that moment with your son.
Man,
That's
being a
heavy.
dad is everything, to me. And that was part, man. Wanted to come on your podcast because I'd watching you talk about, doing stuff with your son. And one of the ones, the things that you had filmed, you had talked about when you came back from vacation. I think, was it your refrigerator that broke, or you
Yeah,
talked about something,
washing machine. Yeah,
washing
the
dryer.
washing
And
machine. Yeah.
yeah, and you just really kind of put life in perspective. Is that, man, like those things. And I was so guilty of that in the past, of getting pissed off and upset and letting that ruin that moment. But you really kind of put things in perspective. As, man, I got a house, I got a great home, I got a great son. And man, I love that. I love how you said that. And I think we need to, continue to put out messages like that, so we can, put life in perspective. There's this meme I have, and people have probably seen it, but it's a guy, he's on the subway, and one side is all sunny and great, and the other side, it's stormy and gloomy. And the point of the meme, the guy's sitting in the middle, but the point of the meme is, it's the side that you decide to sit on every day
Mhm.
is how your day is going to go, right? And how you look at life. And so when you did that segment, it may have been something simple for you, but it really, I needed to hear it that day, and it really, it hit me. So thank you for doing that. And like you said, it sometimes, you don't know, it's the simplest message that you may put out that has an effect on others.
Well, thanks for sharing that, man. It took me a long time to get to that point because I had to go through a lot of healing and self reflection to get to that point, because it's easy to go off the rails when something bad happens. But and
100%.
and I really think putting God in everything, it can help keep us on the right path, because it helps us find the blessings even though there's other things going on. Because I mean, I'm not going to get into it because this is your episode, but we got hit with some heavy news last week with my mom, and it's like,
Oh, man, sorry.
it's thank you, and I really tried hard to like accept it, but still like be grateful, because at the same time it's wild, man. Like there's these opportunities coming at me. So I'm trying to prioritize mom, but then also thank God for the blessings. And I know where I know where, where she'll end up because she's a believer, but it's still that challenge of not letting something kind of pull you to the point to where you start to get, off course, because it's hard, man. And for everybody listening and watching, life is not easy. You're going to have
Yeah.
stuff that comes up, and it's especially as men, I mean, I'm a single dad now because I'm divorced, but I'm still a leader. So I have to still step up, and same with you, Chris. Like we still have to do what we're called to do, even though life is going to throw things at us where we can't control. They're out of our hands, and we can talk more of that when we talk about Tambo. But I think that's, as men, we may not always get the recognition, but we still have to do the right thing, even when it's not what we want to really do, you know?
Yeah, 100%, and it's hard, and I'm kind of dealing with that now. As I got a lot of great things that are happening, but Tambo's health is also a factor, and then other things going on, and it's kind of like, man, it's a roller coaster, right? And it's trying
Yeah.
to balance everything, and getting back to, like, being a dad. I don't know if you would ever watched Sons of Anarchy.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
love, dude. I'm all about OMGs, dude. I'm
yeah,
obsessed with
man.
that culture.
So, I man, what I tell people all the time, one of the greatest series I've ever watched on TV. I'm home recovering from knee replacement, which has been tough trying to slow down. But I've been rewatching the series. But one of the things that I took from that early on is how um, he always wrote journals to his son, and
Mm,
I started doing that before my son was born. Is I would write in the journals, not just when I was happy, but when I was down, when I was dealing with things. Because being an older dad, my biggest fear is I'm always going to be there for my son if I'm able to. But if being an older dad, things can happen, and that's my biggest worry in life now. And I want him to understand who his dad was, and also understand that I was imperfect, but I continued to fight, and I continued to try to do things the right way, and understand that life gets hard, but you get through it. And so
mhm.
I've been writing to him, man, since 7 months before he was born. And
Wow.
I try to do everything to save for him, but that's the biggest thing, is just worrying about just not having enough time with him.
How old's your son?
He's 3.5.
Oh, nice. Okay, very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, you
And
keep you keep aging yourself talking about all these old TV shows, man. So,
I know, man. So I'm like, it's crazy.
sons of what?
Or hey, if you haven't seen The Wire, you got to go watch The Wire too. Another great series on TV.
Oh
Older
yeah,
older one.
yeah.
We just have to do a whole show on old TV shows.
No kidding, man. No kidding. No, that's really cool that you're writing to your son like that and have been, even before he was born. That I guess I forgot about that part on that show. I would kind of jump around a lot. They killed off my favorite character early on, so I quit watching a
Who
lot
was you?
of
Who
them.
was your? Who was
Oh
your?
gosh, what was his name? He was in I I think he was in like a football movie like as a
Was it
kid.
Opie? Opie or?
Yeah, yeah, Opie. They killed him
Oh
off, and I was
yeah,
like, dude, he's the coolest one.
I
So
know, man.
I got
That that
frustrated.
that was
So,
brutal, man. And
yeah,
and that show, man, it was just like you never knew who was going to get killed off or what was going to happen, and it was like,
yeah.
man, just so many plots and twists, and it's just such a great series.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. What's the lady's name that plays the wife? That was Peggy Bundy, Kate.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I can't think of her.
I
Man,
think
I can't.
she lives in the same town I'm in. I'm not 100% sure, but at least she did at one point.
Oh, wow.
Because I think Kirk Sutter was. I think they're married. I think he was out here, but never seen him. But in that show, I don't see, man. I don't think I've watched that show in years. But I know at the time when it came out, dude, it was huge.
Man, I was hoping they were gonna do a spinoff with, like, his sons and
Yeah,
everything, and I know they had talked about it, but I guess it just never kinda came to fruition. But man,
yeah, they
what a
should.
great series.
Yeah, man. So you moved back. I'm guessing you get back to Maryland. That's when you get Tambo. Is that when he comes on the scene?
Yeah, so kind of a full circle moment. I moved back, and we talked about my mentor Bernie. Well, he had
Mhm,
since then, while I was in Hawaii, moved up and got up to our deputy chief role, right? So he was in one of the highest positions. So I
mhm.
had taken on content leaving K9, and I didn't realize it at the time how much I was struggling, because sometimes I think depression becomes normal for us, right? We think,
Yeah.
oh, this is normal. And then when you finally get out of it, you realize how much you were really spiraling. But so anyway, kind of going through life, I got into another leadership position. And Bernie comes up to me one day, sitting at my computer, and says, hey, the K9 commander, because I had moved up in rank when I left K9. So I was now, I think I was a lieutenant at the time. And I say, hey, the K9 commander position's opening up. And that's all he said. And then he just kind of walked away. And I think he knew what he was doing, because he knew. I was like, holy crap, the one position that I had dreamt about, the one position that would seemed so far-fetched for me when I started, and to step into the role that my mentor, the guy that took a chance on me, became a father figure, had. And man, I thought about it over the weekend and prayed about it, and then I decided I was going to go for it and put in for it. And then I was lucky enough that they selected me for the team. And it's funny, he picked me, but one of the stipulations is like, look, you're coming back as the commander, is you're not gonna get a dog. You're gonna be too busy. This is a high volume team. Running the team and trying to work a dog is gonna be impossible. And at the time, I was like, cool, no problem. I was just stoked to be on the team and be leading it, right? The kid that really didn't have any direction, that people thought I wasn't cut out for, and now I'm stepping into this role, leading this high functioning team, was surreal. So about a weekend, getting acclimated, and I remember, sitting in his office, and we talked about the me busting out the Ray Lewis dance, and all the jokes and all the struggles I had with my first dog. My first dog was was terrible at tracking, and Bernie was a great trainer, and this dog, he would track to a certain extent, and then he just wanted to air scent everything, so he wouldn't keep his nose to the ground. So he's like, all right, I'm coming out and I'm gonna fix your dog. And at the time, Bernie always had this presence, and I was like, holy crap. I was like, I don't want him to flip out on me or whatever. And so we go out, and he puts these hot dogs down to keep the dog's nose down. And the minute the dog was done eating the hot dogs, he's like, yeah, I'm done keeping my nose down, and started pissing on things and just not listening. And I remember his face getting so red, and I'm, brand new on the team. And is it all right if I cuss, or I don't want to cuss?
Yeah, you're good,
all
man.
right,
You're good.
all right.
Yeah.
He's like, Chris, put this fucking dog away before I put a fucking bullet in him. And he was, of course, joking. He would never do that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, holy shit. Like, so I put him in, and I'm thinking, I'm telling my mom, like, man, they're kicking me off the team. They're sending him back, and I'm losing my dog and this and that. So long story short, we got through it, and he was never a great tracker, but he became good enough. But we were joking about it that day and just talking about all the fun stories. And then he was telling me how proud he was of me of taking over the team. And then he kind of gave me this prophetic talk where he said, hey, when it comes to leadership, don't ever try to be me. Be yourself, find your own niche, and find what you want to be known for, and do things the right way. And I don't know, it's just weird how he said it to me. And that kind of stuck with me. So that night I go home, I'm in bed, my phone rings at 11 o'clock, and it's my work supervisor. And that's never a good thing when your phone starts ringing, late at night. And I pick up, and she tells me I have horrible news. And I said, what? She's like, Bernie's gone. And I said, what do you mean?
Man.
She's like, he died. He was taking his, the trash out in his driveway, and he collapsed, and then his family couldn't find him, and they found him in the driveway. And, by the time he had gotten to the hospital, he had passed away. And, I remember sitting there in bed, and I couldn't cry. I couldn't talk. I got off the phone, and I just sat there trying to process everything, right? Because again, this was the man that stepped into my life and believed in me when nobody else did, let me make mistakes, helped me early on with things, with relationships in my life and all that kind of stuff. And now he was gone. My dogs were all gone, and I felt alone. And now I have this team to run, and I really struggled. And we talked about, when we first started talking about when I was a baby, when I went through my dad leaving and I got really sick and they couldn't figure out. Well, now here I am as an adult. Man, my heart, I was having chest pains. I was having pains on my flank. So that I'm getting CT scans. I'm getting heart scans. And guess what? There was nothing wrong with me. I went through every gamut of tests. And I remember having that conversation with my mom, and she's like, that's when she said, it's the same thing. It's the same thing when your dad left when you were a baby. And that's when it hit me. She was right. It was a broken heart. I'd lost, you're losing that male role model, or that dad in your life. And that's what I was going through. So, I'd always pull it together and do a good job at work, but I'd come home, I was withdrawn, um, wasn't talking. And when I get down, I tend to withdraw and not talk. And you think you may be acting normal, but people can see that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just trying to grasp onto anything to help me get through the days. And luckily, I still had the gym and everything. But that's when it really hit me, man. That's when I said, like, the hardest points in my life, I've had my dogs with me, my working
Mhm.
dogs. And that's when I went to my current supervisor. And I had known her for a while because we had came up as handlers on the team together. And I said, look, I need a dog. And
Hmm.
she's like, no, you're gonna be too busy. It's not happening. So for a year, we went back and forth with this, and it kind of became just a comedy routine where I would just ask after meetings and she would say no, or get out of here. And I was still just kind of getting by with, just getting by in life, I guess. And, I can't say I was like extremely happy. I was just really just kind of getting by. And then one day I said it again and she's like, okay, you want a dog? You got one. And I was like, awesome. I was like, what vendor am I going to? And I'm thinking about, do I want a shepherd? Do I want a Mal?
Yeah.
Do I want a GSP? Like, what's the name going to be? And then she said the name, Tambo.
Hmm.
And I was like, I got quiet. And of course I knew who Tambo was. And so the story on him is that he was kind of the dog and, that just kind of was there, but you kind of easily forgot about, right? So he
Hmm.
went through he was never aggressive. So take that out of play from the get go. This isn't a story about, oh, the dog that was aggressive that, nobody could handle. It wasn't that. It was that, he was stubborn. He was aloof. He was guarded, a great working dog.
Hmm.
But I think when it came to people and they get working dogs, they want that instant bond.
Yeah.
And I got that with my first two dogs, and that wasn't the case with Tambo. So the first
Hmm.
handler, I think he was just too little too stubborn for that person. And then the second handler had him for a little bit and just there was no bond there and there was no connection. So Tambo was just kind of sitting in the kennel, just
Hmm.
kind of wallowing. And it's funny, when I was running the unit, I would see him and I would be like, and we were just kind of like two passing ships in the night.
Yeah.
And then I saw him one day, a handler had taken him home just to get him out of the kennel for a little bit, take him home for the weekend. So Tambo walked in the house, looked at him and his wife, lifted his leg and pissed right on their wall. And
Oh no, man.
so needless to say, he, he was back in the kennel the next day. So
Oh.
and I remember telling one of my coworkers, I'm like, man, I am glad I do not have that dog. So here I am now, right? And then I just get the name Tambo in my head from my
He didn't
boss.
hear that, did he? Is he still behind you?
He's on the floor, right? And yeah, he's off the couch now. He's on the floor. But
Okay. Poor
so
Tambo.
I was like, I don't know. I said he doesn't really bond with anybody. I said maybe he's better off with somebody. And she's like, nope, that's the deal.
Hmm.
Take it or leave it. And I think she knew at the time that the only person that was going to maybe be able to get something out of this dog and be able to connect with him was going to be me.
Yeah.
And I sat there hesitantly, what felt like for 15 minutes. It was probably more like 30 seconds. And I said, all right, I'll take him. And that was a Friday. So Monday morning, I go up to get him out of the kennel, and this was kind of a defining moment as I walk back. I grab a leash, and man, I felt like a brand new rookie again because I hadn't worked a dog, and a lot of these young guys on the team had never seen me work a dog before, so I was a little nervous about that too. But I just go back to he was in the last run, and I go back there. It's kind of dark back there, and I walk up, and he sees me, turns and stares at me, and I'm staring at him, and it wasn't like, and again, it wasn't an aggressive stare down. It's like two man and dog just kind of staring at each other, just kind of seeing what each of us are made of. And
Yeah.
as I'm looking at this dog, I'm seeing the labels that he has, right? Guarded, aloof, stubborn, can't bond with anybody. And I was like, my God, this is me. I'm
Hmm.
looking at myself.
Wow.
And I got goosebumps, and I was like, man, this dog just needs somebody to take a chance on him, like Bernie did for me. And that's when I kind of heard Bernie's voice say, "Chris, what are you waiting for? Get in there and get him."
Wow.
And so I get in there and I hooked him up to the lead and walked him out. And it was funny. He wasn't paying much attention to me, but he was kind of giving me the side eye because he was curious about me, right? He's like,
Yeah.
all right, like, what are we doing here? Is this a one-time thing, or what are we doing here? And so I didn't take him home right away, but I think, and I was talking about this the other day on Working Dog Radio, and it's not like a sexy story of how we bonded. It was through consistency, right? And I think this dog just wanted routine, and he wanted consistency. So every day before I took him home, I would go up there, I'd feed him his breakfast, I'd take him out, try to be consistent with him. And then when we started training, it was just being consistent on how I worked him, right, and letting him trust me. And he's a very independent dog, which is what you want when you're working a dog. But also, there comes a time when that dog needs you to step in, and then when you do, that's when that dog needs to be able to listen to you. So it was a matter of him trusting me enough to step in when I needed to, and then also me being able to read him. And when he would hit his change of behavior and knowing when to shut up and let him work. So we really kind of, through consistency and over time, we really kind of hit our stride. And man, we certified and we're rocking and rolling after that. And it was an amazing 7-year run.
Nice. So being the commander, were you still like actively working Tambo a lot in a work environment, or were you more, because you were in a supervisor role, just more or less like with him, but the other guys were kind of handling the volume of the calls and stuff?
That was a lot of it, but I that was always my biggest fear, is that having this dog is that I always say you want men or women to follow you for the person you are, and not your title, right? Because there's people that you would follow into the depths of hell, and then I always joke, but there's some people you wouldn't follow into a Starbucks, right? And
Yeah, no doubt, no
I would
doubt.
say, unless it's a pumpkin spice latte, and then I may have to go in, but it's a different story. But um, like, anyway, I that was always in the back of my mind, that they were thinking, maybe I'm not working the dog enough. So I'd always try to get out there and go, say, okay. I struggled with it at first, but then again, like we talked about in the beginning with the dogs turning it on and off, I think you got to find a routine. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, on this day, no matter what, unless it's something crazy happen, I am going out and I'm training this day. No matter what, on this day, I'm going out and I'm working this dog. And I was able to stick to that for the most part and stay consistent. But there was always days where, those emergencies do come up and you're in the office. But quite honestly, Tambo kept me pretty grounded. Like, he would tell me, I'd sit at my desk and he'd come up and bite my boot and say, "Dad, we need to go out and work."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, buddy, like, you're right. Let's go." But it was a balance, and I'm not going to sit here and say it was easy, because that job of running that team is extremely difficult, and not many people can do it. And I was proud of myself, and especially doing it, working a dog. But I mean, I always think that I could have done better with working him more, but I think I found a good balance with what we did throughout our career.
So that first time you brought him home, did he pee on your wall?
No, no, man. So that's
good.
how I knew it's a funny story, because the first time before I brought him home, we had a trip out of state, and we were out of state, and it was the first time him and I together in a hotel. So we got in and he checked out the hotel room. Any new place we go to, he still does it now. He'll do a sweep of the room, of the whole, where, kind of sweep the room and then come back. So he swept it. And then he had his very kennel, but always left the door open. So he kind of went in his very kennel and was kind of just chilling. He was used to being alone, and I wasn't going to force anything. So we were starting to bond. And I remember I was on my laptop and I fell asleep on the bed, and I woke up to this scratching sound, and it was him. He was on the bed and he was fluffing the bed up to get the covers comfortable. Hey, I don't think the
Oh,
dog ever been
nice.
on a bed before.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like I woke up and half awake, and I'm looking at him. My eyes are real big, and he's looking at me like that. And it was like two teenagers that, got caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And he like leaped up like a trampoline. He was so embarrassed and then like dove into the kennel. And then I was like, it's all right, buddy. You can come back into bed. And normally I wouldn't tell someone to let a new dog in bed, but I felt like,
Yeah.
hey, I've been doing this long enough. This is an exception. He didn't come back in, but so I went to bed, and then 2 a.m. I woke up and he was at the bottom of the bed, curled up, sleeping. So I knew he was getting comfortable and was at peace. So when I finally brought him home, man, he loved it. He of course swept the house, and then I have a big yard. I live in a big historic house, and he went out in
Nice.
the yard and started doing the zoomies and stuff back and forth,
Nice.
and it was really cool to see, man. It was kind of like he kind of knew this is mine now. I have a home, and
Yeah.
I have a handler, and I don't think he's going anywhere. And so it was a really nice moment bringing him home.
So I'm sure, and you can explain further, but I'm sure your mental health really improved a
Oh,
lot once you had Tambo, in your life, and you guys were able to bond and spend that much time together.
yeah, I mean the joy came back, and just having him with me at night, just sitting down, watching a TV show, and him just lying there with me, and just that presence and the joy of working him. And there's something to say about getting up every day and bringing your partner to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was ready to go right out the door and get in the car, and you're driving to work, and it's like no matter what you have going on at work, is you kind of know that you're in this together, right? You're not alone. And having that back really gave me something that was missing, for a long time. And I was finding a lot of happiness again, and quite frankly a lot that I didn't realize was missing, because like I said, I think we get into a routine of thinking, hey, this is just the new normal.
Yeah. Without giving away anything that's sensitive, what, and then you may not be able to answer this, but like with the dogs in your agency, are they primarily bite dogs? Are they tracking dogs? Are they kind of universal? Can you kind of give our audience a glimpse of, because most people are familiar with like a, police department dog, and like my son lives with a canine.
Hmm.
My ex-wife's boyfriend is a canine officer with the railroad. So, he has a certain role, but I'm just curious for the folks watching, could you share a little bit insight on like what Tambo's trained to do or what the canines do for your agency?
Yeah, so our canine unit started out early on, and when it initially started, it was all dual purpose dogs for
Mm,
any non-handlers. That means that they're patrol trained and then trained in a detection work. And our
okay.
primary focus for detection was explosive detection.
Okay.
So when we started our unit, we had all dual purpose dogs, and but over time, we searched a lot of volume of detection sweeps, to the point where we were getting to the point of 3,000 vehicles a day,
Wow.
which is unheard of for especially explosive detection dogs, and keeping those dogs motivated and
Yeah.
making sure that they're on point and no margin for error. So over time, we shifted our focus away from the patrol side, um, and just focused on the single purpose explosive detection, and that's kind of where we're still at right now with our dogs. And I'd always tell the handlers, because a lot of them, when they get in, the first thing is like, hey, I want a patrol dog. I want to do the bite work and all
Hmm.
that stuff. And I know that's all the sexy stuff. And I was like, but and I always say sometimes it's like the explosive detection dogs are kind of like, now I'm going to age myself again, man. There are the Rodney Dangerfields
Oh, you went way
of
back. You went way back.
they don't get any respect, right? And
Oh
but
man.
sometimes so I was like, man, I just keep coming with the zingers, man.
You
See,
better hope the seniors watch this episode.
I know people going to be Googling all these names and movies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, man, we do the dirty work, right? We do the stuff behind the scenes that doesn't get the notoriety. We're not posing for pictures with kilos of coke and all this other stuff and money and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing the dirty work behind the scenes that doesn't get talked about. But
Okay.
I always say, man, it's a sense of pride in what we do is so important. And what I always say about explosive detection work, man, there's a slogan we had early on, and it's on the back of one of the first shirt we did for Tambo, and I brought it over on his shirt. It's initial success or total failure, right?
Hmm.
And when you're working explosive detection, dog, that's fact because
Yeah.
there's no margin for error. Working in narcotics, dog, yeah, you can have margin for error, but explosive detection, dog, okay,
Mm-mm.
your dog sits on something, you better be right, because if not, a lot of times EODs getting called in, they're evacuating places, right?
Yeah.
So it's a process of being a good handler, being able to read your dog, being able to trust your dog, and I was really able to get the handlers to understand that because I think sometimes in the canine world we get caught up in all the bravado, right? It's sexy to post the pics of all the bite work and
Mm-hmm.
the patrol worker again posing for all the pictures, but I would say we do the dirty work, and all the dogs are magnificent in what they do. But I think sometimes that the explosive detection side of things gets downplayed with what we do, but it's just as important in
Oh
my
yeah.
opinion.
Big time. I'm still waiting for the Ren 1010 Canine Cop reference since you're going so
Oh
far
man,
back.
I don't
Remember
think I
that
go
show?
back that far, man.
That's way back. That's way back.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about so Chris was kind enough in Tambo to send my son, if you guys can see it, Tambo's book. There's a little bit of a glare there, and then he sent him, as you guys can see it, some trading cards. Still got a little bit of a glare, so that made my son Jacob's day. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how the book came about? I know you have another book, and then let's talk about one more round in your the T-shirt for Tambo and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so we'll start, man. Shortly after I left the Tambo retired. He was getting up there in age, had an on-the-job injury. Instead of going through, he had a torn ligament. Instead of putting him through surgery, decided to do a retirement for him. Anyway, he was getting up there in age, so it was right around the time of the birth of my son.
Mm.
So it was great timing, and at that time too, I felt like I was running the unit for 7 years. I felt like it was a good time to move on. I had good people underneath me that I felt were well uh, more than ready to take over the unit, and I was ready to leave my last bit of canine with Tambo because I felt like that bond was so special and what we accomplished together. So I moved on to another position. Tambo retired. I had my son. I took off about 9 weeks of work, and it was a great transition. Becoming a father was undescribable for me. I know hearing my son's cry for the first time. I remember breaking down and the doctor and saying, she's like, I love when the dads cry, and
Hmm.
these big stoic men come in here and they hear their son or daughter cry, and hearing them break down is one of the happiest sounds in the world, and
Yeah.
so that was just one of the best memory in my life I ever had in becoming a dad, and the transition was pretty smooth for Tambo as well. As
Hmm.
Tambo, I think, saw my son as an extension of me, and spent the days like sitting by his bassinet, and when my
Hmm.
son would cry, he would bark and let
Nice.
us know that my son was upset. So he kind of became my son's best friend as well. So becoming a dad, that's what really inspired me to write the book. So I had planned to do that, but then as I was doing that, that's when Tambo's diagnosis came to light.
Mm.
Tambo was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, hemangiosarcoma, and was given 2 weeks to live. And it
Wow.
kind of came out of nowhere. He had a mass that ruptured on his spleen, and luckily, I came home from work that day early, but I found him sprawled out, and he was in the process of bleeding out.
Mm.
And so I rushed him over to the vet, and I remember them coming out and telling me that, "Hey, look, um, your dog is in the process of bleeding out. His spleen is littered with masses that we believe are also cancer. He's actively dying. Um, you probably just may want to say your goodbyes to him." And I said, well, do I have any options? And she said, well, the only option we can try is to remove his spleen, give him a blood transfusion. And, oh, by the way, that's going to be about $12,000.
Man.
And Project Canine here came into my life recently before then and brought him into the program because he had a double ACL tear that he recovered from. And I remember calling Jason Johnson, the founder, and Jay said, I told him what was going on. He said, Chris, what do you want to do? And I said, Jay, I know this dog. I know Tambo. I know what the doctors are saying, but he's not ready to die. He's telling me he's not ready. I know my boy. And he said, say no more. He said, we got your back. He said, we'll cover it. And I told the doctors to kind of, they were kind of surprised, but I said, I want to go through with the surgery. And anyway, he made a full recovery through that. Biopsy came back, obviously, as cancer. We started going through chemotherapy. So that's when I started writing the book. And I wanted to write the book initially also for, I know what it was like to grow up to be unseen as a child and to be scared about things and feel uncertain. And then also what was going on with Tambo too. So I tied the two in together. So the book is about, Tambo who gets sick in the book, but for a way that a child understands. But he takes medicine to get better. But along the way, he's inspiring all these children that are scared of different things to not give up and to not be scared and to never give up like Tambo. And that was the gist of it. And the kids learned to go forward with scary things, and they would use a slogan, never give up like Tambo. And then, in the back of the book, I put a resource guide for, parents and teachers to go over what they learned from the book. So it was really cool to see that kind of come to fruition. And, I had my son in mind when I wrote it, and also just knowing what it was like to kind of feel that way as a child. And then as far as the 9-line shirts, as Tambo started going through his cancer battle, one of the things we started doing, and that's how I kind of started gaining a little bit of following on Instagram, is I initially just wanted to document the journey that these dogs go through in retirement and some of the tough things that they deal with. But along the way, it started attracting more than law enforcement. It started attracting people that were going through hard things in their life, or um, cancer patients. Parents were reaching out. My son has cancer, and he loves seeing Tambo's posts and the pictures he posts. Because I'd always do posts when I would take him for chemotherapy, but I always tried to not to make it gloom or doom. So there was one where I did us in the John Cena t-shirts, and I didn't say I was going to think of some wrestler from the early 80s, but I was like, I was going to Iron Sheik or something.
There you go. Nobody knows who that is. But at least say Hulk Hogan, man. At least people know who Hogan is. Iron Sheik.
So we did a little John Cena skit where Tambo comes out the door. My mom opened the door. My mom's a 2-time cancer survivor, and then Tambo comes out and Cena's shirt and playing his music. And then I did an Ice Cube one. And where today was a good day, and I put sunglasses and a chain on them. And then I really started leaning into the Rocky mantra, and that's where One More Round came in. And I think it was Rocky 5 when he, at the end, when he had the fight scene with Tommy, was it Tommy
Morrison?
Tommy Gunn.
Tommy Morrison.
Yeah, Tommy Morrison in real life. And Tommy knocks him down, and that's when Rocky is laying there, and I always love that part of the movie. He's laying there and he's seeing Mickey saying, get up, you still got one more round in you. He said, get up, you son of a bitch. And I always get goosebumps even watching it, because I loved all the Rocky movies. And Rocky gets up and he's like, yo, Tommy, he said, one more round. And Rocky was beaten up to the point at that point where he didn't think he can go anymore. He's like, one more round. And that always stuck with me. And I really started leaning into it, because I was like, when you think you're tired and you want to quit, you still got one more round in you. And that's where, we went through chemo, and Tambo wanted the days of nausea and being sick, but he still got up every day. He still fought. So I started talking with 9-line, and they love and they've been fantastic to work with, and
Awesome.
they love the idea. We worked on the design together, um, and we ended up selling 600 shirts in, I think, 3 weeks,
Wow.
which was awesome. And $5 from every shirt went back to Project Canine Hero, which is funding 100% of Tamba's cancer battle. And then I'm actually releasing the second 9 line shirt on the 21st.
Oh, cool.
And we just finished the design. And man, this one's really cool. And I'll say it's still leaning into the whole, boxing thing a little bit, but yeah, I think people will really enjoy the design and and the words that are on this shirt. And I think it'll resonate with a lot of people, not just in the canine world or the cancer people that are dealing with cancer, but just anybody that's dealing with anything hard in their life. So I really expect these shirts to do well.
That's incredible, man. That is so cool to hear that you've had people kind of in both you and Tambo having people in your corner so he can have that surgery and all the support that you both received, but you're also giving back and you're helping others. It's wild, man. I say this a lot, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. We found out last Thursday my mom just got diagnosed with cancer. And
Man.
I've never dealt with it as far as, in the family. And my son's 8, so he kind of understands, but it even just having this book, is good for him because, you try to talk to him like, I mean, I'm very open with him, but it's still for a little kid to understand, his grandmother's not going to be here
Yeah.
a whole lot longer. So it's just cool. The timing of our episode it's pretty wild, man. It really is.
And I got to tell you, man, I know what you're talking about all too well. And when you asked me if my dad was still around a little while ago, and I said he wasn't, that's where this all comes into play, and where this is really good. This story with Tambo is really going to hit home with everybody. So
Hmm.
I told you that we've never been able to connect, and he's been in and out of my life. And so um, my dad contacts me. He had met my son briefly after he was born, and got to hold him, but it was a short visit. So I hadn't heard from him from a while. Tambo's going through his cancer battle. Struggling with dealing with all that, but trying to stay positive. My dad calls me and now tells me that he has cancer.
Wow.
And it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, was supposed to
Hmm.
make a full recovery. But so I was optimistic. But and again, remember, I talked about the conversations with my dad and never able to connect and get anything out of him. Well, something weird was happening. He started, when we would talk, he'd start asking me how Tambo was doing, how his
Hmm.
chemo was going. Am I getting a Tambo shirt? Because at the time we were doing some Tambo shirts through Houndbound Brewing, which I did a partnership with for a while too. And he started opening up,
Hmm.
and we were connecting. We were talking about things that we never talked about before. So my dad somehow found a way to open up with me through Tambo's fight. And
Man.
so he was living in St. Pete, and we took my son out there, and I got to see him, and it was such this trip was everything, because I got to see, and there's pictures in the book of that trip with my son with my dad, but I got to see my son with my dad, and my dad holding my son, and in a way it healed 40 some years of pain, because I was seeing my dad give affection to my son. And in some ways I was living through my son of
Yeah.
getting that affection through my dad. Um, so during that trip, he had some setbacks. And then we found out that the cancer, he was going into hospice, and
Hmm.
he wasn't going to make it. So we had our final kind of weekend together, where, for the first time in my life, he told me he was proud of me.
Hmm.
I told him I forgave him. And the one thing I promised before I walked out the door that day is he made me promise him that the cycle breaks with me, that
Hmm.
give my son's name's Mackie, give Mackie what you and I didn't have, because he went through the same trials and tribulations with his dad, and somehow it spilled over to him. And he's like, make sure that Mackie doesn't deal with our pain that we know all too well. And I'm getting all this from this man for the first time that I've been chasing for 40 some years. And all this emotion pouring out, and we're telling each other we love each other. And I have the final picture with him in my book that I took from that weekend. Um, and all of it because of this dog.
Yeah.
And I left 3 days later. He went and kind of slipped into a coma, and he passed away peacefully. But and it was devastating. But in some ways, I was at peace because I got that closure I
Yeah.
needed with my dad. And you think about the moment at the Oriole game was healing that. That was because of the dog. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the dog being there. So I was talking to somebody recently, and they're like, "Gosh, this would make an amazing." And there's so many other stories that I know we don't have time to talk about, but there's so many other stories. And it basically said that the spine of the story is this dog,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many of these beautiful things happening, but it's because of this dog. So it's not really, it wouldn't be a movie about a dog per se, but the dog's kind of the spine of the story. And that's kind of what the book is, right? And that's why I wrote the book. And yes, it's a story about, it's Tambo's story, but it's a story about hope. It's a story about loss. It's a story about redemption. It's a story about fathers and sons, and it's a story about, making every second count. And when people say that your story is over and you think you've hit your final end, that's when your story is just beginning.
And I am so glad to hear that you were able to get closure with your dad. And I was going to come back around. I was going to ask you before you told that story, and thank you for sharing that. I know that's not hard. That's not easy to share, but I was going to ask you if your dad ever told you that he was proud of you, because I think as men, we really crave that from our fathers.
Yeah.
Like, it means so much to us, because it's one thing when a friend says it, or even our mom, which is still great. But like when your dad looks at you and says, son, I'm proud of you. That is so huge, so important, you know?
Man, it was everything. And I tell my son that all the time. I don't know if he fully stands it right now, but I tell him I'm proud of him every day. And I look at him, and I'm just in awe. And I'm watching him, go from a baby to this little boy now with
Hmm.
this big personality. And then just hearing him say, "I love you, Daddy." I mean, it's just like, gosh, that's everything. And now, my purpose is to live my life to be the best dad that I can, and try to be. And I'm far from perfect. I never have been, but try to be as perfect as I can, and try to get better as much as I can each day, to be somebody that he can look back on and be proud of, and know that what I stood for and what I believed in. And again, being an older dad, that's always the worry that you have, is not having that time to show him that. And in some ways, this is kind of leaving a legacy for him to look back on and see.
Well, and it's so incredible that you broke that generational curse. You know, you hear so many stories about how trauma's passed down, and men just kind of, are creatures of habit and follow what they know. And that used to be kind of the old school saying, like, well, that's how my dad was. I
Yep.
don't say I love you or I'm proud of you because that's how my dad was. And,
Yep.
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story to hear that your dad was able to connect with you through Tambo, but especially to be able to connect with your son. And then you're crushing it as a dad, man. Like, you're doing what all of us need to be doing. And showing you can still be strong, you can be masculine, but you can be kind, loving, and gentle, as the Bible teaches us, with your kids, especially young men, because they need that. I mean, they have to have that.
Yeah, and I want everybody to, when they read the book, I want them to feel that. One of the unique things that I did is I'm good at like writing music, but I'm terrible. I would never perform it. So I created a whole soundtrack for the book.
Hmm.
I'm a big hip hop guy. I know that
Okay.
that's not everybody's cup of tea. But I use some of I created QR codes. So after some of the chapters on the book,
Nice.
there's songs that tie into the chapter. Like there's one about my dad. There's one about, one more round, with like it's called One More Round with Tambo. And so after you read the chapter, if you choose to, you can click on the QR code and it'll pull the music up and you can listen to it. Because when I want people to read it, I want them, and there's a lot of pictures in there, but I want people to feel it. I want them to feel the highs, the lows, and to know that when you do hit the lows, there's always light at the end of that tunnel. You just have to find it.
Amen. Where can folks pick up the book, Chris? Like, I'm going to put the link in the description, but still, I'd like for you to tell people where they can find it.
Yeah, so exciting stuff coming up. So I just got the first copy
Nice.
shipped to me. This is the hard copy version with the dust jacket. I have a lot of great people that endorsed it on the back, including a lot of great law enforcement people. The Doggist, Nine Line did an endorsement for it. Tambo's oncology team. But so the book launches virtually. We're doing a virtual launch first on August 17th. I have a link for that people can sign up for and get the first copy of it virtually if they choose. After that, it'll be on starting on the 18th. It'll be available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark, all the big platforms.
Okay.
So one of the big things is they have us in a few weeks. They have us going out to New York City, and Tambo is currently going through chemo again, and I wanted to make sure his health was good. So it looks like we're going to be able to make it,
Nice.
especially, and hopefully my knee is recovered enough where I'm not limping. Tambo and I both going to be limping through New
Yeah.
York City, but
Yeah.
we're going to make it. But
Yeah.
man, this is huge. They're putting us on the big NASDAQ screen
Oh,
in
wow.
in New
Yeah.
York City. So I'm going to be posing in front of it with Tambo with the book, and then they'll have our
So
pictures
cool.
on the
Yeah.
the NASDAQ as part of the book launch. So that's going to be a cool moment, and for Tambo and I. So we're doing that, and then the book will obviously be available on all platforms and in paperback and hard copy, and then I'm going to be doing some book signings locally. If anybody wants one specifically with when it's signed, or I've had some people ask if they can get one with Tambo's paw print. I'd be
Yeah.
more than willing to do that as long as his health is still good. And there you go,
If you
right
guys
there.
can
There's
see
one
it
in the
right there. Yeah.
children's book.
Jacob loved that. Yeah, he loved that.
So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. And one other thing I'll touch on with the Rocky thing, to circle back a little bit, we were really leaning into that Rocky thing, and during that time, man, the Philadelphia Eagles, man, reached out and they said, "How would you and Tambo and Project K9 here like to be featured on Sunday Night Football?" And man,
Nice.
November 16th last year against the Lions. They featured us on Sunday Night Football. They brought us out in the first quarter on the field. And then once they started talking about um, Tambo's career and then his cancer battle, man, we got like a standing ovation from 60,000 people.
That's
And
amazing.
man, talk about like a goosebump moment, man. And that's, if you look at the cover of the book where I say, two underdogs. I always labeled myself early on as a castaway or an underdog, and no one that was never really given a chance, and kind of the same with Tambo. And I was always say we're two kind of underdogs and castaways that kind of came together. But here we are standing on the football field at the time of the defending Super Bowl champions on Sunday Night Football, getting this standing ovation.
It's
And I'm like,
awesome.
man, this is just surreal. And they
Yeah.
ended it talking about Tambo being a Philadelphia fighter through and through, leaning into that Rocky mantra,
Yeah.
and him getting his chemo right outside of Philly. Man, it all just kind of tied in together, and it was such a cool moment. And there's some pictures in the book of us at the Eagles game, and we had a custom Tambo Eagles jersey that he had on. So it was a really cool night.
It's really cool how many people you're inspiring, Chris, especially with Tambo's story. And I mean, ultimately the biggest part of the story for me is that you were able to rekindle a relationship with your dad through
Yeah.
Tambo, but there's so many people that will be impacted by that. And it's just, I really applaud you for having the courage to share the story and just come out, and especially talking about your story, not just Tambo, but intertwining what you struggle with and bringing in the father wounds, because that is really something I think more men need to hear. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of guys choose dangerous professions that didn't get that validation from their fathers growing up, because they want someone to be proud of them. They want to do something bigger and better than themselves. I know that's what I did.
Yeah.
When I chose my career, and I think you're chasing like this dragon, like I gotta prove to the world that I am somebody by going into a dangerous career path. So it's really cool that you're so open and courageous about your story.
And in some ways that, that chip on your shoulder that you get is what I tried to take the positives out of it, because
Hmm.
that wasn't the greatest way to go. But in some ways it what drove me to be successful,
Yeah.
because I was always trying to prove. It was never about proving something to other people. I was trying to prove something to myself,
Hmm.
and which made me very successful in everything that I did. But the problem is I never really got the time to sit and enjoy it. Right? You hit this milestone, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is what I got to do next. Right? Like I was a guy that, I graduated high school. I didn't go to college right away, and people were going to get degrees and stuff like that. Well, later in life, I get my bachelor's degree,
Hmm.
then I get my master's degree, and now I'm halfway through my doctorate, right? But I'm finally taking the time to step back and say, wow, look what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
Like I mean, but I was never settled, because like you said, I was always chasing this dragon
Hmm.
and trying to prove something to others. And I look at myself now, and I wish I was like, gosh, I wish the older me, like be the Obi-Wan and come back. And there's another zinger right there, Obi-Wan. Well, everyone's into Star Wars now,
Yeah, they
right?
know
So
who
they,
that is. They know who that is.
yeah.
Yeah.
But come back and give that guidance to the young me. And it was funny that day I left my dad, right? Because I would say that there was this scared little boy that lived inside of me for so long,
Hmm.
and it was always that's where my insecurities came from. So the day I left my dad and we had that closure, it was almost like I visualized him sitting there, leaving him there with my dad, like
Hmm.
finally being released in a way that, not in a bad way, like, hey, I'm getting rid of you, but I
You found
finally
peace. Yeah, you
able
found
to
peace.
find peace, and he was set free. And I almost felt like I was giving my dad a second chance, as
Hmm.
he was now getting a second chance with this little boy that stopped everything stopped for him back then. And it was a really moment that I thought about a lot in at private moments with myself. So yeah, it was just it was such a deep moment when I really sat back and thought about it.
That's beautiful. And I'm gonna age myself real quick. Since we're talking about characters, when you and Tambo go to New York, since you're in Baltimore, don't wear an Orioles hat like Elaine did at the Yankees game in Seinfeld. You
That's
remember
right.
that? You remember that? They kicked
Oh
her out.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Seinfeld, man.
Yeah,
Like,
I love
yes.
that show. Yeah. It's way back, going way back. So
Oh man. That's so funny, man. And you're right. That's when like TV and movies were really good. And I
yeah.
feel like now, like I'm home with, recovering from this knee stuff, and I'm like really just trying to find like new stuff to watch. And that's why I end up going back and watching like Sons of Anarchy or The Wire,
Right.
because I can't find stuff that I want to watch on TV these days. You
Yeah.
know? I
It's
end up
not the
I mean,
same.
I have gotten into the Power series with like the 50 Cent does, and stuff like
Mm.
that. So I've enjoyed those shows. But other than that, man, and Yellowstone, I watched that, but it's been hard to find a lot of shows that I've really gotten into.
Yeah, they're not the same like they used to be, man.
No, no.
Not the same. Do you have, I know we've talked a lot about the Rocky movie, but do you have like a favorite verse or a motivational quote you'd like to share with our audience that maybe kind of got you through some of your hard times, especially when you lost both dogs and then your mentor before Tambo maybe was, even in a part of your life? Is there something you'd like to share with everybody watching?
Yeah, and it's funny. It's something that now I'm gonna come across like a huge nerd here about Harry Potter, but I do like the Harry Potter movies, so people can make fun of me. That's fine. But um, but
Who's Harry
there was
Potter? No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah. But they talked about that there was a quote in there that you can find light um in the darkest of times, you know, if you look for it, something along those lines. And I've always kind of believed in that long before hearing that quote in the movie, is that as dark as the nights get, and again, getting back to the other quote, when you feel like things are truly at the end and this is it, I can't go anymore.
Yeah.
um I truly believe, like, that's when the story's beginning, that's when the journey's beginning, that's when the comeback is beginning, right?
Yep.
And that's when it's all about to get better. And I think it's a mindset, and I think it's how we have to look at things, right? And but that's also, that requires having hope and having faith, right? And I think that's what's carried Tambo and I so far in our journey, because again, he was given 2 weeks. If you look
Yeah.
up hemangiosarcoma, people can look it up. It's supposed to kill dogs within weeks or days. It's one of the most vicious cancers out there, and it comes out of nowhere. It's unforgiving, and Tambo is one of the true outliers. So when we went through this cancer diagnosis, they kept trying to give me expiration dates for Tambo, and I said, no disrespect, because I don't believe in that. I believe that the mind, body, and spirit is what keeps us going, and I truly believe it's the hope that has kept Tambo going. And then when people have hope, that's when miracles happen, right? That's when unexpected things happen. When they have faith, that's when unexpected things happen, and that's far beyond any odds or numbers that you can put on things. And I think that's if I really want to put something out to people, is it doesn't matter what the odds are. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. It's what you believe, and having hope and having faith and staying true to that. And that's when that light turns on. That's when miracles happen, and that's when beautiful things happen. And I have a dog now that has beaten this cancer that was supposed to kill him for 13 months. And recently we went back, and they said that the cancer's back, and now there's some density in his lungs, and that's never a good thing. And I know ultimately what that means, right? But we're not giving up. He'll tell me when his time is ready, and we're going to continue to go forward. And I told Tambo when we started this journey that this is our final call, this is our big call, and we're gonna make the most of it, and we're gonna inspire people along the way to to make this happen and make it unforgettable.
It's awesome, man. And I like how you tied in the light and the darkness and not losing hope and having faith. I want to share a verse tonight from Romans. It's chapter 12, verse 12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. So don't lose hope. Stay the course, don't quit. Things will get better. And I highly recommend giving it to God. As cheesy as that it sounds, pray about it. Ask God for help. He loves you. He'll never leave or forsake you, and he will lead your path. He will get you through whatever you're facing.
And I love that. And I always believe too is God doesn't make any mistakes.
Mm-mm.
He's leading us down these paths, and some of these things, it's like, why am I going through this? This is horrific. This is terrible. And you're dealing with all this stuff with your mom right now, and it's easy to ask the why is this happening, right? But there's a path that we're all going down for a reason, that's going to lead us somewhere, and we need to have faith and again, believe in that. But God doesn't make any mistakes.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Well, I end each show with a prayer, Chris. Would you like to do it, or would you like for me to take the pressure off and do it for you?
I'll let you
All
I'll
right.
let
Okay.
you
All
lead
right.
us out on this one.
All right. I got it. You ready?
Yep.
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity tonight to sit down and just to hear Chris's testimony, and also hear the story and share Tambo's courageous story. Lord, it's amazing to see how you're working just in all of our lives, but especially through Chris and his dog Tambo, how he was able to find peace with his dad and then bring his son into his dad's life and to just get that closure. And that's only because of you, Lord. And we know that you created the heavens and the earth. You created all of us, and you created all creatures, and that Tambo is working to help other people, especially those people that are suffering. Lord, I pray this episode was pleasing to you. I pray that it helps somebody out there this evening, that somebody's hearing this and they find hope and they find peace. And most importantly, they know, God, that you are real and that you are a loving Father and that you will never leave or forsake us. Lord, thank you for this platform. Thank you for the opportunity to sit behind this microphone and share these powerful stories. I pray you bless Chris, be with Tambo. I pray that you will be with just everyone that's helping keep Tambo healthy and just help them as they continue to go out through this journey and to help people and to spread their message. And I pray, Lord, that you will bless Chris and his son and his family. And just thank you, Lord, for everything that you've done. It's in your most holy name that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for checking out the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Be sure to ring that bell, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. New episodes drop every week. If you don't watch on YouTube, check us out on Spotify. We're also on Amazon and Apple Podcast. Chris, is Tambo still there? Can we say bye to him?
Yeah,
Did he take off?
Let me see if I can turn this around. You see him right there on the floor?
There he is. He got back to us.
Yeah, he's looking out there. He's at the point right now where he usually gets his treats and stuff. So he's waiting.
Oh, he's ready. He's ready.
I'm kind of closed off in here.
Yeah.
I was afraid my son was going to be, when he first got home, was going to be yelling through the house.
Yeah.
So but Tambo's ready to go get some treats. So I gotta oblige.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, brother, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. It was fun hanging out and talking and sharing your story. And let's stay in touch, man. It's going to be fun to kind of watch you guys go to New York, and I'm going to do all I can to help spread Tambo's story and help inspire others with your episode. I really appreciate you, man.
Man, it's been an absolute pleasure. Great conversation, and hopefully I've led some people on to some new movies and TV shows that they never heard of before. Right?
That's right. So you guys watching, go watch Point Break. Go watch Roadhouse. Check out
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah, watch Rocky, the old Rockies. Rocky 4 is the best one, in my opinion. But
yeah, great one.
But yeah, man, brother, I appreciate you so much. God bless you, man.
God bless, man. Thank you.